Do you know a family who's fought over real estate? In fact, 70% of families fight over real estate after mom and dad pass. In today's episode, we will talk about why this happens and how to avoid family disputes. Hi, I'm Randy Ihara.
And I'm Dan Ihara.
And welcome to the Advisor Podcast. We are real estate wealth advisors in Hawaii, and in today's episode, we'll be discussing family disputes. So, Dan, tell us, why do 70% of families fight over real estate?
Well, the biggest challenge is many folks that fight over real estate, they don't fight over the cash or the liquid assets. They fight over real estate. Why is that? Because you can't divide it. Now, if you've only made one child, then you're golden, right? Because your child will never have a fight. There's no one to fight with. But the moment you make more than one, two or more, then there's a chance that that's going to happen. And unfortunately, the data has proven that it's the majority of families that have a dispute over real estate. One of the main reasons why people fight over real estate is, the world tells us to put their home in a trust, right? And that's really good. For those of you who have real estate, definitely put it in your name of the trust. But what the trust does really well is it protects you from probate. But the question is, does it really protect you from your family? And unfortunately, what we're finding is that's not true. It doesn't protect you from the family. The main reason for that is because in your trust, and for those of you who have real estate, I'd recommend you go read your trust. And you let us know what it says. And what I believe it's going to say most of the time, your trust says that upon your demise, your children share it. Well, how do you share real estate? It's really hard to, right? In fact, it's almost impossible to share real estate. Imagine, you've got 3 properties and then you've got 3 kids and you might say, hey, I don't have a problem, Well, then my next question would be, well, who gets the first pick? Or should I say, who do you love the most? And then at the end of the day, what are your kids thinking of you? Remember, you're going to be gone at that point. So how are they going to see the person that got the best property in their eyes? They're going to think that they did something behind their backs to get the best situation. And that may not have been true. Why? Because you might have actually put that in motion. And that's one of the problems.
A lot of people, they don't understand what they're doing, when they give, maybe more benefit or more property to one child versus the other, right? But it really does create an environment where, kids argue, especially if it's hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on the table, right? Why did mom give you more than they gave me, right? Did they love you more? And it kind of creates a resentment, especially after the mom or dad is gone and now there's no judge to, decide what is right and wrong. They kind of tend to end up fighting amongst themselves among that. And some people don't end up very happy when it's not divided equally, right? And so, what happens when, let's say there's 2 kids who inherit a property and, one's living there and one wants to sell and the other, they're living there. They don't want to sell. They don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, that is problematic. As parents, we want to take care of our kids. And if one is doing well, you really don't worry about that one. But the one that's kind of maybe not doing as well, you're concerned about the one that needs some help. And so you oftentimes, many of our clients have said, hey, why don't you let them stay in the house? They live in the house. And unfortunately, he never ends up investing. They're not taught to build wealth. Right. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And that's our mission, is to help you and your families to teach them how to build wealth, right? To how to protect that wealth and then also how to pass it on. Well, the challenge comes if you have 2 children or more and one's living in the home. After you pass away, what's going to happen to the house? Well, the one that's living there is going to claim that it's his. I mean, he's the one that spent the most time there. He's the one that maybe have taken care of mom and dad in their last years. And so he believes he deserves it. And there's no wrong in that belief system. He's probably feeling accurate about that. Unfortunately, though, many of the others may not agree. And that's where challenges come. It's unfortunate. We see this so often, but the worst cases is one that we're dealing with today. Right now, We have a client that mom's in a memory care facility. It's very expensive. And mom has run out of money. So there's two children. One that's living in the house that really never worked a day in his life because he didn't have to. And then the other one that, has had a good job. She's retired and she thought everything was well on her side financially, but now she's having to pay for mom's care because mom doesn't have enough money. So what happens? Well, she's really running out of money, so she's got to sell mom's house, which is really designed to care for mom, to take care of mom's needs toward the end of her life. But unfortunately, the son says, I'm not moving. And that's where the problem comes. Unfortunately, this is a real situation that we're dealing with today, where the family who took care of the brother, brought him food, did everything they could to help him, and he didn't help himself. They're having to kick him out of the house. And unfortunately, it gets really ugly. It starts with a conversation, then he stops answering the door, he doesn't talk to his sibling, and now his siblings run out of time and money. So she's called the police and the sheriff's office. They come in and try to talk to him. That doesn't work. Then she goes down to the courthouse and gets a writ of possession that will allow a judge to say, yes, under these circumstances, he needs to be removed. And in the next week or two, the sheriffs will go to the house and remove him. And that's really unfortunate. It's unfortunate because both the daughter and the son had nothing to do with this decision. It was mom's decision, mom and dad's decision to allow him to stay there, because we never really thought it through far enough all the way to the end. We make decisions on a short-term basis, not considering what the long-term impacts are. And unfortunately, we see the negative outcome of it, right?
Yeah, this is a really sad story to see, a sister kicking out a brother from their childhood home, right? Because mom has no money. She has no assets except the house left. Mm-hmm. And we see this all the time, and maybe it's not as significant as that, but a lot of the time when when a property is owned by the children, when it gets passed from mom and dad, and one child's living there and the other children are not, and they're not getting rent, they're not getting any benefit, it's hard. For a little while, it's okay, but, years, decades, this person has owned an asset worth hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but they only have expenses, right? They get no benefit from it. Well, one of the children does get a huge benefit. They don't have to pay rent. They don't have to pay all these other expenses that all the other children are having. And for a little while, it's okay, right? We want to take care of our family, but over a while, this money adds up, right? And especially when you need the money, right? You have no other money left. Otherwise, you're going to be on the streets, or you're not going to be able to pay for care. It just puts the family in a tough situation where they have to make a decision what's going to be best for mom or what's going to be best for the family. So a lot of times, yeah, like you said, the parents put their children in the situation and they don't even realize it, right?
Yeah. And then there's the other side of the coin, right? Where the children put their parents in a situation that was unfortunate. We had a situation where a lady comes to our seminar and she says, Dan, I'm really excited to move into a retirement community because she was taking care of her husband who has dementia, and it was really wearing on her. And she said, well, if we go in together, there's a memory care space for him and I can be independent and we can see each other every day and have a healthy life where there's food and there's care and there's safety all in one place. And she said, Dan, I'd love to do that. So I go to her house and I said to her, well, yeah, I understand you want to sell your home, but who are these three people on title? Because I pulled up her tax records and it shows 3 different names. The names aren't yours. And she goes, oh, last year I went downtown and I signed some papers. I go, so what were the papers? She goes, I don't know. What ended up happening was the children, again, they were trying to do the best they could for mom, but what they ended up doing is trapping mom in her house. What happened was somebody convinced them to transfer the property over to the kids so the mom didn't have any assets left so she could file Medicaid. And that's where the problem came. where she doesn't own a house. The kids now own it. And two things happen in that case. Number one, mom now doesn't have any assets to sell to pay for her care. So the kids aren't paying for her care. So what do the kids do? They trap mom and dad in their own house. And that was horrible. I mean, I left there in tears thinking, holy smokes, people are making decisions without really understanding the consequences of their decisions. Mom really wanted to leave, and she could never leave. The other thing they did is by transferring the name while mom was alive, they have a carryover in cost basis. So what they don't know is that when they eventually sell it, they're going to have to pay capital gains taxes or execute a 1031 exchange, which means they'll never be able to touch the money. They'll have to reinvest it into another asset that is an income producing property, an investment property. And that's really unfortunate that people are making decisions today because of what others may be influencing them to their benefit. And it's really unfortunate. They never really considered mom and what mom really wanted. And maybe we didn't have a conversation around, Mom, where do you want to live? They just made decisions on their own as adult children, not considering what mom and dad really want.
Yeah, that's another really tough situation. And unfortunately, we see these situations, every week, right? We see them many times over the year, and it's really sad to see. In a minute, we're going to talk about how we can prevent these family disputes and how we can get ahead of it. But another reason we see that causes these family disputes over the years is, family members, let's say the daughter takes care of the mom and the mom says to her, hey, you can get the house, right? They have verbal conversations with the daughter, but none of that's documented in the trust or in writing, right? So we definitely want to make sure that any conversations that are had are also put in writing in the trust, because, when it comes down to it, when the kids inherit the property through a trust, the attorneys, the people are not going to have any validation that conversation ever happened, right? And so do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that causes family disputes as well?
Yeah, so many times one of the children end up volunteering to take care of mom and dad. And because of that, they put in a lot of their own time, money, and effort to do so. And most of the time they volunteer to do it. They're not told to do it. They do it because they love mom and dad. Unfortunately, though, we're all human beings and we have some level of resentment over time, as if you're doing this not for them, but for yourself. And then there's this not only feeling of resentment, but feeling of maybe I deserve more, right? And then there could be a time where mom says, yes, I agree that you do deserve more. And it's a conversation, but nothing gets in writing. So mom passes, and now it's a he said, she said, right? The brothers say, well, that's not what the trust says. But the daughter says, the sister says, well, that's what mom told me. Now we have a dispute. Like you said, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, so many families make decisions and have conversations that are not documented. Because the trust document that you have, I'm hoping that you all have trust, the document that you have basically tells the world your wishes, how you want your assets divided, when and how and to whom, right? And that's the real purpose of having the trust, is to protect you not only from probate, but make sure your wishes are fulfilled after you're gone.
Yeah, that's a very, very important thing because, it's not like, hey, mom said I'll buy you lunch. Like, that's one thing. We're talking about millions of dollars here. And right, when that amount of money is on the table, the kids have never seen that amount of money ever in their lives. And sometimes it's not even them. Sometimes it's the in-laws who's saying, get that money. You deserve that money, right? And that's when the family disputes come around, because we're talking about serious type of life-changing type of money that's on the table. And everyone wants to get their share, or maybe even more than their share, right? They feel like they deserve more, right?
So many of older adults say, oh, that'll never happen to our family. Our kids are nice. They love each other. And every parent wishes to see that vision. Every parent has that perspective out of their children. But when you ask the question, do you believe at some point in the history of your family there were hurts and offenses? Everyone's going to say yes. They just don't want to acknowledge it. But when we have these conversations and we ask these questions, you know that these hurts and offenses that are held back when you're 5 or 6 or 7 years old, back when you're kids and teenagers, that are really painful, they're suppressed when mom and dad's alive. When mom and dad leave, those real feelings hit the surface because now they're, like you said, fighting for real money. And now all those hurts, offenses is like the ammunition to say, I deserve to get what I deserve to get. And then there's another side of it, like you said, the in-laws or the outlaws, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, they're going to have a voice to this, and because they believe that your money is my money. And that's kind of how it works. And unfortunately, it just creates more family disputes.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of kids or a lot of siblings, they do love each other, right? Yeah. But when you're put in a situation where you have to essentially manage $1 million asset, you have to be on the same page on every decision. You have to be in alignment on, are we going to sell? Are we going to hold it? Right? What are we going to do if we sell it? Which realtor are we going to use? The house, the roof leaks. Who's going to pay that $20,000 expense? Right? You're putting your kids in a situation where they have to manage and decide on a huge asset, and especially when they're in different stages of life, right? They think differently, they act differently. That's when we see, disagreements, and that's ultimately what leads to more family disputes, right? So what do we do? How have we seen in your experience and our experience to how to prevent family disputes?
I think it really starts with communication, right? And communication early while you can, right? Because at some point in time, should you be blessed to live long enough, we're going to need some level of help. And sometimes there will be points of time where we're going to lose our memory facilities and we're not going to be able to remember things, or cognitively, we won't be able to make those decisions. And then you're going to lose your right to make those decisions. At some point in time, your kids will then say, hey, I need to be the power of attorney for your assets, which means you basically relinquish all your rights to the person you trust the most, right? And so having that conversation with all parties matters, not just with one child, with all of the children equally, so that they all understand it's not the one that's the power of attorney or the trustee that's the favored child. It's all of them that are favored. They're all your children and you love them all. Because anytime the children feel like they're not loved as equally as others, there's going to be resentment. So I'm going to ask you, at the end of the day, when you're gone, do you want your kids to love each other? If the answer is yes, then you're going to want to have this conversation early. Yeah, have it early. If you've got more than one property and you don't need the income for that property, maybe create a pre-inheritance plan, a plan such that you can do a 1031 exchange and separate the assets and allow the kids to predetermine what they would eventually get when you're gone. These pre-inheritance plans really help the families create a legacy while they're alive and build wealth and teach the next generation to build wealth. And then put a time frame. Let's say you have only one property and it's your home. Put a time frame in your trust by which the property must be liquidated. The biggest challenge in family disputes is the trust says you share it, but there's no time frame of sharing it. If you put a time frame on it, and one of our favorite attorneys puts a time frame on that, and what it says is within 24 or 36 months upon my demise, their property will be sold. Now, there's some caveats to that. All family members have a right to buy out the others if they have the financial ability to do so. And if that case happens, then typically what we would recommend is that the buyer, the person who wants to buy it, gets an appraiser. The others get an appraisal. You take the average of the two prices. Now it's hard for anyone to say that somebody got a better deal because it became the average of two numbers that were independent. And that way you keep the family together. Our goal is to help families stay together and so that their legacy lasts for generations to come, as opposed to what we've been seeing lately, where families get destroyed. Cousins don't talk to cousins, nieces and nephews don't talk to each other because there was a dispute because somebody said something or did something that hurt somebody's feelings in a meaningful way. And that put a dagger between these families. And our goal is to prevent that, right? And help them create a plan so that when they're gone, all your kids will love each other.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, just when siblings fight, it doesn't just stop there. It goes generations deep where now their kids, they don't talk to, their cousins, right? And it keeps going generation and generation down. And it's really sad to see that, one decision or one, maybe bad outcome can lead to generational breakage in relationships between family members, right? I want to take a minute and go back to the pre-inheritance plan because I think we need to dive a little bit deeper into that because it's such a good way for families to be able to divide an asset and be able to split up into the different siblings or the different children so that each of them can make a decision for what's best for their family, right? Because a lot of people, that we see, they say, my kids will get this property. And the question that we ask them is, do your kids want that property, right? Because a lot of the times the kids don't want that old 1960s home in Mo'iliili, right? They want a home where they're at. Maybe they're living on the mainland. Maybe they're living in Mililani. They want it where it's best for them and their family and for the goals of their family, not necessarily the old house that mom wants to give to them, right? So can you talk a little bit about how we create a pre-inheritance plan, what that looks like, how people can execute on that?
Yeah, sure. It's the simplest way to put it is most folks have a home in today's market in Hawaii. It's $1 million or more if it's a single family home. Let's say you sold one single family home and you had 2 children. Well, you could sell $1 million asset and buy 2 other assets at $500,000 each. But the pre-inheritance portion of that is you're allowing your kids to be on the selection committee for the replacement properties that mom's going to buy under her 1031 exchange. So it stays intact as mom's properties. It stays in mom's name, but the kids get to predetermine what they'll get when she's gone. So at the end of the day, the kids won't fight. Mom doesn't have a burden of the property. There's no tax, and they get to predetermine what they'll eventually get in the future. The end result of that is mom now gets hugs and kisses for creating this legacy while she's alive versus the 2 kids fighting after she's gone about when to sell it and what to buy and what happens with the money. So the pre-inheritance plan is a movement that we've started a number of years ago that help families really empower them to make good decisions about their wealth. How do we get to that point? The simple question is, do you need the income from your investment property to sustain the life you desire? If the answer is no, at the end of the day, when you're gone, who gets it? And they're going to say, well, my kids do. Well, next question is, what are you waiting for? What if you could do it today and really reap the benefits of the gratitude while you're alive? This is how we keep families together. We help them build a legacy that they can all enjoy together. And when you're gone, the memories of you and what you've done will last for generations to come. We encourage you to create your own pre-inheritance plans. And if you need help, we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, it's such a great solution because when you have one property with multiple owners or decision makers, they all now have to be in alignment into making a decision. They all have to agree to make a decision, right? But when you're able to divide an asset and split it up, so that each family member can now make a decision for what's best for them and their family, now we can go a lot further and there's a lot more benefit, right? Because different people have different goals, different objectives that they want to accomplish, and now they can each accomplish their own goal, right?
Well, and also to your point that you mentioned earlier, Randy, was that most kids don't live in the same community anymore, right? They went away to college and now they never came back. And where do they want their property? They don't want that old property where they don't want it. They want it where they want to make decisions about their own wealth, and you're allowing them to do that. And this is the beautiful part where we help educate the next generation how to build wealth, how to analyze real estate, how to see how that's going to impact your life, either as a primary residence or an investment property.
Yeah. What's one takeaway that you've learned in your career, Dan, that you want to share with the audience?
I think the biggest thing is to have conversations with your family. Take a look at what you have, find out if you need it all, and if not, where are you going to take it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when we're gone, somebody's going to have to make a decision about it. And do you want the day that you pass to be a day that people remember you of being proactive, a person that's intentful about transferring wealth, or someone that just left it to chance and then unfortunately have the kids fight at your funeral? You get a choice in the matter. Today's the day to take that step forward and admit to yourself that maybe I do need a plan. Yeah. One of the things that we find is, Randy, that when we ask people, do you have a real estate plan? Nobody really does. It's a new concept, and we encourage you to think forward, to think ahead in the future so that you and your family will love each other for the rest of your lives. Over the years, we've had countless of families fighting over real estate. And it's heartbreaking to see families being divided over what should have been a blessing. We started developing strategies to help families create a plan to prevent family disputes. This journey that we've been on has led us to writing a book. Julie and I are writing a book now, and it's not only to address family disputes, but it's other issues that we've seen with families and investors who are in the process of building, protecting, and transferring wealth. At the end of the day, we want to help Hawaii's families, and with one of the ways that we're doing that is through our upcoming book, which will be soon to be released the first week in February of 2026. Thanks for tuning in to the Advisor Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, be sure to check out our previous episodes to learn more about how we help families build, protect, and pass on wealth through real estate. We'll catch you in the next episode. Aloha!